Carter had always been the quiet type, the student who could vanish into the background of any college lecture hall and leave no trace. At 21, she walked the Fort campus with the ease of someone who belonged, yet never fully drew attention. Her days were a rhythm of classes, library sessions, and part-time work at the small near campus. Friends knew her as dependable, studious, and polite, but few could claim to know her truly. There was a discipline behind her calm demeanor, a precision in her movements, the way she navigated crowds as though she could read every person's next step. She carried a worn backpack stuffed with textbooks, notebooks, and a laptop plastered with stickers of obscure military units and aviation symbols, an odd mix for an ordinary college student. Her hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail, her sneakers scuffed from miles of walking the campus grounds. Eyes scanned the courtyard with habitual caution, always aware, always assessing. There was an undercurrent in her life that she never shared. Training, drills, and skills honed long before she ever enrolled in college. It was a hidden part of her, tucked away beneath the facade of essays and study groups. On that particular afternoon, the sky had been unusually gray, clouds rolling low over the treetops, carrying a hint of rain. Phone buzzed sharply in her pocket, an unfamiliar number flashing. Urgent. She hesitated for only a heartbeat before answering, her instincts immediately alert. The voice on the other end was terse, professional, and unmistakably military. Carter, Black Hawk emergency. Your presence is required immediately. Coordinates are coming through. Her heart quickened, but her face remained calm. She didn't need to ask questions. Her pulse and mind synchronized with the training ingrained in her from years of preparation. She instinctively retrieved a small tactical pouch from her backpack, something she always kept hidden, and secured it under her jacket. Friends lounging nearby watched, confused by the sudden urgency radiating from her. "Everything okay?" one asked. Only shook her head slightly, offering a faint smile that barely masked the tension in her eyes. In moments, she had left the courtyard, her strides purposeful, a sense of urgency propelling her beyond the realm of ordinary student life. People turned to watch as she drove off, unaware that this was the side of Carter that no one had seen before. This was not a student rushing to a midterm or a work shift. This was someone trained to respond to life-and-death situations. She felt the familiar hum of adrenaline, the precise coordination of body and mind that years of drills had etched into her muscles and reflexes. The streets of Fort seemed to blur as she drove, focusing only on the incoming coordinates and the growing awareness of the situation she was about to face. Details flooded her mind: terrain, potential hazards, weather conditions, and the probable location of the stranded crew. Every piece of information mattered, and she processed it with a speed that surprised even her sometimes. By the time she reached the rendezvous point near the military training grounds, the calm academic world she had inhabited that morning seemed a lifetime away. Smoke could already be seen in the distance, curling over treetops. A Black Hawk helicopter had gone down, and the scene was already chaotic. Civilians, off-duty personnel, and bystanders had gathered, staring in disbelief at the twisted wreckage, the scattered equipment, and the shouting soldiers struggling to take control. Stepped out of her car, her presence immediately drawing attention. There was something different about her stance, her unwavering calm amidst the panic that made people stop and notice. No introductions were needed. Her authority was unspoken but undeniable. As she approached the command point, she retrieved her radio, keyed it with practiced precision, and began issuing orders. Her voice was clear, commanding, yet calm, cutting through the chaos like a knife. The onlookers were stunned. This was supposed to be a college student, not someone orchestrating a military rescue. Questions bubbled in whispered tones around her. Who was she? How did she know what to do? Didn't answer. She never did. Her focus was absolute, on the injured, on the environment, on the lives depending on her guidance. In that moment, the ordinary world had vanished, replaced by the extraordinary demands of survival and duty. And Carter, the student, was now revealed as something far more capable than anyone could have imagined. Carter arrived at the outskirts of the training field, her car tires crunching over gravel as smoke rose from the Black Hawk crash site. The helicopter lay twisted against the muddy earth, rotor blades bent like broken wings. Flames licked the edges of the wreckage, sending bursts of heat into the cold, damp air. Soldiers scrambled, shouting over the roar of wind and the distant rumble of thunder. Some were injured, others in shock. His heartbeat steadied as she assessed the scene. Every muscle, every thought honed for situations like this, kicked into overdrive. She unclipped her tactical pouch and slung it over her shoulder, revealing compact medical supplies, tools, and communication devices. Civilians froze, their eyes widening as she strode past them with authority. One soldier, panicked and dazed, tried to grab her arm. "Wait, he began, but cut him off, her tone firm but calm. "Stay here. Follow instructions. We have survivors to extract. Move." Her presence immediately shifted the energy of the crowd. Where panic had ruled, focus now began to settle. Pulled a map from her pouch, quickly scanning the coordinates and the surrounding terrain. Rain streaked the sky, soaking her jacket, but she barely noticed. Her mind raced through the variables: wind direction, mudslides, the location of each crew member, the proximity of the command post. She keyed her radio, voice crisp and precise. "Team Alpha, secure the perimeter. Team Bravo, approach the tail section carefully. Injured personnel, prioritize stabilization. Coordinates updated. Repeat." Soldiers, both junior and seasoned, followed her without hesitation. Observers whispered. This student clearly knew what she was doing. Crouched near a partially trapped soldier, checking for injuries. Her hands moved with efficiency, tying tourniquets, stabilizing fractures, and calming the frightened man. Each instruction she gave was met with compliance, her authority unquestioned. Civilians holding phones to record footage seemed mesmerized. This wasn't a scene from a movie. This was real, chaotic, and terrifying, but moved through it as though she'd rehearsed it countless times. And in a sense, she had. Years of training, exercises, and simulations had prepared her for exactly this. A sudden roar of wind nearly knocked her off balance, sending debris flying. She pivoted, motioning for soldiers to cover the injured, then assessed the helicopter's fuselage. Smoke billowed from the engine compartment. "Contain the fuel leakage," she barked into the radio. "Fire suppression units, 2 minutes maximum." Every second mattered. Mind calculated risk and probability in the same instant. If the flames reached the fuel line, everyone within 30 feet could be incinerated. She made the decision instantly. Order the survivors farther back while guiding her team to stabilize the area. Meanwhile, scattered medics and engineers attempted to follow her orders, often hesitating under pressure. Moved among them, correcting mistakes, redirecting their efforts, and demonstrating each action with precise efficiency. Her calm, measured voice cut through the chaos. "Step here, brace there, pull slowly. Don't panic. Watch your footing." Those who doubted her skills before now found themselves trusting her entirely. Even officers with years of experience deferred to her knowledge. She was a quiet force, the eye in the storm. A flash of lightning illuminated the field, revealing one of the most dangerous spots: a soldier trapped under a collapsed rotor blade. Instinct screamed at her, but she kept her voice steady. "Ropes, stabilize the load, medic monitor vitals, we move together." Time slowed in her mind. Every move had to be precise. One slip could cost a life. Inch by inch, the trapped man was freed, pulled to safety, his eyes wide in disbelief at the calm authority that had guided him through terror. As rain poured harder and mud threatened to swallow the field, stood tall, her eyes scanning the remaining chaos. She was no longer just a student. In the eyes of everyone present, she had become a leader, a rescuer, a force that no one dared challenge. The Black Hawk emergency had revealed the truth about Carter: quiet, composed, and deadly effective under pressure. And this was only the beginning of a long night. The rain poured relentlessly, soaking to the bone, yet she moved through the chaos with unwavering precision. She ducked under fallen rotor blades, guiding medics to the injured soldiers trapped in precarious positions. Every movement was deliberate, every word measured. Civilians on the periphery watched, their phones forgotten, unable to comprehend how a college student could command the scene with such authority. Focus was absolute. Survival depended on coordination, and she had spent years perfecting the very skills now saving lives. Flashbacks flashed in her mind, brief but vivid. She remembered early mornings at her father's airfield, the smell of aviation fuel mingling with wet grass as helicopters roared overhead. He had taught her navigation, survival tactics, and the importance of calm under pressure. Flight simulations, emergency drills, obstacle courses, she had endured them all with meticulous focus. Her classmates knew nothing of the countless hours she had spent hunting reflexes, memorizing protocols, and practicing emergency extractions. They thought she was ordinary, in reality, had been preparing for moments exactly like this. A call crackled over the radio. One of the soldiers had spotted additional survivors clinging to a ledge halfway down a muddy cliff. Eyes narrowed. The terrain was unstable, slick with rain, and any misstep could trigger a deadly slide. She quickly scanned the map, calculating angles, distances, and potential hazards. "Team Bravo," she barked, voice firm and unflinching. "Secure ropes along the ridge. Step carefully. Keep tension steady. No sudden movements." Soldiers who had once doubted her now followed her every instruction with quiet reverence. Herself began the descent, hand over hand, feet searching for stable footholds. Her experience in high-risk environments guided every movement. She reached the trapped soldier, a young man shaking with fear, blood running down his arm. "I've got you," she said calmly, tying his harness with practiced efficiency. Her voice was steady, a lifeline amid panic. Every motion mattered. Too fast and the rope could snap. Too slow and another storm gust could send them plummeting. Inch by inch, she guided him to safety, adrenaline and training working in perfect tandem. Meanwhile, chaos still reigned at the crash site. Smoke twisted into the stormy sky, flames flickering from the helicopter's fuselage. Eyes scanned the field, identifying hazards others had missed, fuel puddles, unstable debris, and dangling electrical wires. Her mind moved faster than anyone could follow, anticipating dangers before they became threats. She barked orders over the radio. "Team Alpha, fire suppression now. Keep medics behind barriers. Extract remaining injured from rear rotor. Coordinates updated. Repeat." Every instruction was precise, every decision life-saving. Even seasoned officers paused to watch, impressed by the fluidity of her command. Civilians gasped as she moved among the chaos, pulling soldiers to safety, administering quick medical aid, and calculating risk with the confidence of someone who had faced danger countless times before. Calm energy spread through the teams. Fear was replaced with action, panic with focus. She was the linchpin holding an unraveling operation together. Lightning split the sky, illuminating a particularly treacherous slope where two more soldiers were pinned. Didn't hesitate. She secured anchor points, checked knot strength, and led the extraction. Rainwater swept past, threatening to destabilize the lines, but her precise instructions and hands-on guidance prevented catastrophe. Inch by inch, both soldiers were brought to safety, their relief palpable. By the time the last survivor was secured, stood at the center of the wreckage, rain dripping off her jacket, eyes scanning the field for anything missed. The crowd of onlookers remained silent, stunned into awe. She had moved seamlessly between leadership, medical assistance, and tactical navigation, revealing the depth of her training and the quiet power she had carried all her life. Carter, the student, had become a force the world would never forget. The storm intensified. Rain hammered the crash site, turning the earth to slick, treacherous mud. Carter crouched atop a slope, scanning the field, assessing every detail with the meticulous focus that had defined her training. Her eyes locked on a figure pinned beneath a section of twisted rotor blade, the man's hands clutching the wreckage as panic flickered across his face. A gust of wind shook loose debris nearby, sending it tumbling dangerously close. Every second was critical. The wrong decision now could mean death for both the trapped soldier and the rescue team. His mind worked faster than the storm around her. Years of high-pressure exercises, navigation drills, and helicopter simulations converged into a single moment of clarity. Team Alpha, anchor the ropes to the western ridge. "Team Bravo, secure the slope with stabilizers," she commanded. Her voice was calm, but each word carried the weight of authority. Soldiers hesitated at first, fear glinting in their eyes. Mud was slick, lightning flashed across the sky, and yet moved forward with unwavering confidence. She anchored herself first, testing the tension on the rope before gesturing for the others to follow. One misstep could trigger a mudslide that would sweep them all into the ravine below. The trapped soldier's breathing was shallow, panic rising in his eyes, crouched beside him, speaking softly yet firmly. "I've got you, just follow my lead, one move at a time." She tied his harness with practiced hands, checked every knot twice, and motioned for the team to begin the extraction. The climb began slowly. Guided the soldier hand over hand, foot placement precise, voice constant as she instructed the others. Rain lashed at their faces, the cliffside slick with mud and debris. Soldiers clutched ropes, muscles straining, trusting her judgment implicitly. Lightning flashed, illuminating the danger around them, loose rocks, sharp metal edges, and the precarious wreckage of the Black Hawk. Calm energy kept panic at bay, turning fear into focused determination. At one point, the rope creaked ominously. Didn't flinch. She adjusted the load, signaling others to redistribute weight. "Slow and steady, watch your footing, no sudden moves." Her voice cut through the chaos like a beacon, each instruction life-saving. Inch by inch, the soldier moved closer to safety, guided by her unerring instincts. Below, medics stabilized other survivors, but its attention remained fixed on the cliff. Her strategic mind anticipated risks before they materialized. A flash flood threatened the slope, and she shouted adjustments, rerouting the ropes to safer anchors. Soldiers followed, executing each maneuver perfectly, impressed by her foresight. Even the officers at the command post paused, noting how effortlessly she commanded respect and action. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the trapped soldier reached solid ground. Relief washed over him, his eyes wide with disbelief at the calm authority that had guided him through terror. Crouched beside him, checking vitals, offering a reassuring nod, then immediately scanned for the next challenge. There was no time to linger. Lives were still at risk, and the storm showed no signs of relenting. Her presence transformed the chaos into order. Soldiers, medics, and civilians alike followed her lead, executing complex maneuvers with precision. Smoke and flames still licked at the wreckage, but steady coordination kept the scene controlled. Every move reflected a combination of training, instinct, and courage. She had made the life-saving decisions no one else dared, balancing risk and reward with absolute clarity. As the last survivor was extracted from the cliffside, stood tall, soaked and exhausted, yet unshaken. Her gaze swept the field, assessing damage, ensuring no one was left behind. She was no longer just a student. In the eyes of everyone present, she had become something extraordinary, a calm, commanding force of life-saving power. And as the storm raged around her, she knew the night was far from over. By now, the storm had grown relentless. Rain swept across the crash site in sheets, wind whipping debris through the air, yet Carter remained the anchor amid the chaos. Every movement was calculated, every instruction precise. Soldiers scrambled to stabilize the remaining wreckage, medics moved between the injured, and civilians had taken cover, their eyes wide with disbelief. Calm authority had transformed the scene from panic into controlled efficiency. But the most shocking revelation was about to come. A crackling sound cut through the storm, followed by a voice over the radio, tense yet unmistakable. "Carter, we've got eyes on you, coordinates confirmed. Stand by for extraction." The words pierced the chaos, reverberating across the wreckage. A hush fell over the nearby soldiers and onlookers. "Carter," someone whispered. Eyes turned toward who didn't break her rhythm. But the significance of the name hung in the air. Her real identity, a trained, elite operative, was now out in the open. For years had carefully concealed this part of her life. To the world, she was a student, a quiet observer, someone who blended in perfectly. Yet here, in front of soldiers, medics, and civilians, her dual existence collided. The murmurs around her grew louder. Phones clicked, cameras recorded, and journalists who had arrived as rumors spread now scribbled frantically in their notebooks. Everyone wanted to know the story of the college student orchestrating a dangerous Black Hawk rescue. Focus didn't waver. She continued issuing commands, coordinating the final extractions while processing the shockwaves her name had just created. Her voice was calm and unwavering, guiding the teams with a precision that left no room for doubt. Team Alpha, final sweep for casualties. Team Bravo, secure the perimeter. Medics, prioritize the critical injuries. Repeat. Every word was deliberate, every decision life-saving. The chaos of discovery had no place in her mind. Only the mission mattered. The pilots themselves now emerged in their helicopters, hovering with cautious precision. Over the radio, one pilot's voice was tinged with relief and awe. "Carter, we underestimated the situation. You've got everything under control. Well done," responded succinctly, deflecting praise, redirecting attention to her team. The pilot's acknowledgement confirmed what everyone had begun to suspect. She wasn't an ordinary student. She was a professional, trained to operate in the most extreme conditions, capable of leading lives through chaos without hesitation. Below, civilians gawked as moved among the injured, offering calm reassurance. Soldiers whispered among themselves, trying to reconcile the fact that a college student had directed the rescue with expertise surpassing their own. Even the commanding officers seemed stunned, briefly stepping back to watch as coordinated logistics, medical assistance, and structural stabilization. Her dual identity, student and elite operative, was now exposed, and the awe surrounding her only intensified. Lightning illuminated the wreckage, casting long shadows over the chaotic field. His eyes swept the scene, calculating the safest extraction routes, the integrity of the remaining wreckage, and the locations of every team member. The storm's fury had not slowed her. If anything, it sharpened her focus. She moved like someone operating on instinct, experience, and unshakable courage. Every instruction was precise, every movement deliberate. Finally, as the last injured soldier was lifted safely to a waiting helicopter, paused for a moment. The storm had not yet passed, but the immediate danger was over. Her drenched hair clung to her face, mud streaked her jacket, and her hands bore minor cuts and bruises, yet she stood unshaken. The whispers of Carter continued around her. She had been revealed. Her ordinary life as a student had ended in an instant, replaced by the undeniable truth. Carter was extraordinary, and the world, and the soldiers she had saved, would never forget her name. By nightfall, the storm had eased, leaving a wet, shivering field littered with debris. Carter, soaked and exhausted, walked among the rescue teams, checking one last time that everyone was safe. Soldiers she had directed exchanged quiet, respectful nods, their earlier skepticism replaced with admiration. Civilians, who had come expecting chaos, now whispered stories of the college student who had orchestrated the entire rescue. But before could process the moment, the unmistakable sound of cameras and microphones approached. Journalists and media crews had arrived, drawn by the remarkable events and her now famous name. Flashbulbs popped, cameras rolled, and reporters clamored for interviews. "Miss Carter, how did you do it?" shouted one, while another asked, "Were you trained for something like this?" The questions came rapidly, but remained calm, her demeanor unchanged despite the sudden attention. She deflected the focus from herself, pointing instead to the soldiers, medics, and first responders who had risked their lives. "We all did our jobs. Everyone worked together to ensure the injured were safe." "That's what mattered," she said, her voice steady, commanding yet humble. Social media exploded almost immediately. Videos uploaded by bystanders went viral within hours, showing directing soldiers, calming the injured, and coordinating helicopter extractions with precision and authority. Headlines ran across news feeds nationwide. "College student leads Black Hawk rescue. Student turns hero amid helicopter crash." And Carter, ordinary student, extraordinary bravery. Friends from her dorm and classmates flooded her phone with messages, half of them stunned, half of them awed. Barely looked at her phone, focusing instead on ensuring every survivor was accounted for. Back on campus, students who had seen as nothing more than quiet and studious began piecing together the truth. She had walked among them for months, seemingly ordinary, yet here she was, commanding military personnel in the midst of a life-or-death crisis. The disbelief was universal. How could a student orchestrate a Black Hawk rescue better than seasoned officers? Rumors spread, growing into a full-blown narrative of hidden skill, bravery, and composure under extreme pressure. Military officials also began acknowledging her efforts. Emails, phone calls, and private commendations arrived, praising her quick thinking, leadership, and courage, yet remained modest. When asked about the praise, she repeated her mantra, "It wasn't just me. Everyone played a role. We saved lives because we worked together." Her humility struck a chord with both the public and the military, showing that heroism did not require arrogance, only focus, skill, and courage. Even the rescued soldiers spoke publicly, highlighting calm authority. "She was like a lighthouse in a storm," one said, voice still shaking with emotion. "I don't know how she knew what to do, but she saved us all. She wasn't just a student, she was our guide, our anchor." The word spread across news channels, social media feeds, and blogs, fueling a growing admiration for the young woman who had kept her composure when lives hung in the balance. By the end of the night, returned to her small dorm room. Mud-streaked and exhausted, she reflected on the events. Fame, praise, and viral recognition could wait. Her responsibility had been to the people on that field. She poured herself a cup of tea, letting the adrenaline subside, the quiet hum of the campus now a stark contrast to the chaos of hours ago. Understood that her life had changed irrevocably. The world had seen her name, her skill, her courage, and while she remained the same disciplined, humble student, she now carried the weight of having revealed the extraordinary in herself. The campus was unusually quiet the next morning. Rain had washed the streets clean, leaving the scent of wet grass and asphalt lingering in the air. Carter sat at her desk, staring out the window at the empty quad. The events of the previous night played repeatedly in her mind. The roar of the storm, the twisted rotor blades, the terrified soldiers clinging to life. Even though hours had passed since the last rescue, her heart still thumped with residual adrenaline. She sipped her coffee, allowing herself a rare moment of stillness. It was strange, she thought, how quickly her ordinary world had collided with the extraordinary. Just a day ago, she had been a student worrying about assignments, deadlines, and exams. Now her classmates, faculty, and the entire nation knew her name, her hidden capabilities, and the heroism she had exhibited. Had always lived in duality, student by day, trained operative when duty called. Most of her peers didn't know, and she preferred it that way. Her life had been carefully compartmentalized, each world existing separately, until the helicopter crash forced the two to collide. She thought about the soldiers she had guided, their wide-eyed expressions, the trust they had placed in her commands. There was a weight in that trust, a responsibility she carried alone at the time, yet one that had defined her actions. Saving lives wasn't about recognition. It was about instinct, preparation, and the courage to act decisively. And yet, for the first time, felt the strange sensation of being seen for who she truly was. The quiet student was gone, replaced by the reality of a young woman capable of extraordinary feats under pressure. Her mind drifted to her father, a retired Black Hawk pilot who had spent countless hours teaching her the mechanics of helicopters, emergency protocols, and the psychology of high-stakes decision-making. She remembered sitting in simulators for hours on end, mastering navigation, emergency extraction, and team coordination, often while her peers played sports or attended social gatherings. He had always emphasized that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. That lesson had guided her every move last night. Also thought about her classmates, friends who had cheered for her in mundane ways. Study sessions, late-night coffee runs, casual chats between lectures. None of them had any idea what she was capable of, and perhaps she was grateful for that. It was a strange comfort to know that while the world now admired her, her ordinary life hadn't vanished entirely. She could still be a student, still attend classes, still blend into the crowd when she chose, but she knew she would never feel ordinary again. She leaned back in her chair, reflecting on the duality of her existence. Heroism, she realized, was not a mask she wore. It was an extension of who she had always been. Calm under pressure, disciplined, analytical, and deeply committed to the lives of others. Recognition was fleeting, but the lessons, the responsibility, and the experience would stay with her forever. She understood that the world would now see her differently, and perhaps she would have to adjust to that. Yet in the quiet moments, when the adrenaline faded and the chaos was over, she returned to herself, the student, the young woman who walked through the quad as if nothing had changed. As she sipped her coffee, made a quiet promise to herself. She would honor the trust placed in her, continue to act when lives were at stake, and never let the accolades define her. Her identity was more than fame, more than recognition. It was a commitment to courage, preparation, and responsibility. And while she would return to her classes, her dorm, and her friends, she knew the extraordinary had become part of her. The storm, the crash, the rescue, they had revealed a truth she could no longer hide. Carter was no longer just a student. She was a force of life-saving skill, courage, and resolve. Weeks had passed since the helicopter rescue, but the memory of that night remained vivid for Carter. The storm, the twisted wreckage, the terrified soldiers, it all lingered in her mind, a reminder of the lives she had helped save. Yet the world had changed. Her name was now known nationwide. Interviews, news articles, and social media tributes celebrated her courage. Students who once barely noticed her now whispered in awe as she walked through the campus quad. Had never sought attention, but the recognition was inevitable, and she carried it with quiet humility. The military formally acknowledged her efforts. A ceremony at Fort brought together commanders, fellow rescuers, and survivors. Stood in uniform for the first time in years, the badge of service pinned to her chest. She listened to speeches highlighting her decisiveness, calm under pressure, and leadership. While the accolades were meaningful, remained focused on the broader lesson. Teamwork, preparation, and responsibility could save lives. She deflected personal praise, emphasizing the soldiers, medics, and first responders who had followed her lead that stormy night. Her humility deepened the admiration surrounding her. Back on campus, life gradually returned to normal, or at least as normal as it could be. Attended lectures, completed assignments, and mingled with friends. Yet there was a subtle shift in perception. Classmates approached her with respect tinged with awe, and professors who once treated her as just another student now regarded her as someone extraordinary. Though cherished her privacy, she began sharing subtle anecdotes about resilience, focus, and courage, teaching others that ordinary moments could conceal extraordinary potential. She became a quiet mentor, inspiring peers without claiming the spotlight. Still found time to reflect privately. She thought of her dual life, the disciplined operative who could take command in a life-or-death scenario, and the ordinary student navigating textbooks and lectures. Both identities were essential to her, and both shaped her understanding of courage. Heroism, she realized, wasn't about recognition. It was about readiness, responsibility, and composure in critical moments. Even when unnoticed, the training, preparation, and calm could tip the balance between life and death. This awareness guided her in every choice, whether in a classroom or at a disaster site. Her family, too, celebrated quietly. Her father, a retired Black Hawk pilot, hugged her tightly, pride and relief in his eyes. "I always knew you had it in you," he said, voice thick with emotion. Smiled but didn't boast. She understood that real courage wasn't performative, it was consistent, deliberate, and often unseen. The rescue had exposed her abilities to the world, but she had always known them herself, and that self-awareness gave her peace. One evening, returned to the edge of the training field, now serene and quiet. The wreckage had been cleared, leaving only a clearing in the grass. She watched the sunset, the sky streaked with orange and gold, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. From student to rescuer, from ordinary to extraordinary, she had navigated the duality of her life with precision, humility, and courage. Every challenge she faced reaffirmed her commitment to preparation, skill, and service. As the sun dipped below the horizon, smiled faintly. She knew her life would never be ordinary again, and she welcomed it. The world had witnessed her bravery, but she understood that heroism was not about accolades. It was about action, integrity, and responsibility when lives were at stake. Carter, once just a student, had become a symbol of courage, resilience, and dedication. Her legacy would endure, not because the world remembered her name, but because she had proven that ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things when called upon. With a final glance at the field, turned back toward campus, walking steadily into her dual life, a student, a citizen, and an unwavering force for good in a world where extraordinary moments could arrive without warning. She was ready always.